and we have some set instructions that we'd like to read to make sure everyone's clear on that. For the full presentation, in this part of the competition, you're taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges before judging here. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes with a 5-minute cushion to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 accounts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you're finished, the judges will ask you questions for 20 minutes. During the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside the role play. Some important things to keep in mind. The ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, these should be described in simple, practical, common sense fashion. Using technical, philosophical terminology or basing your argument on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. Similarly, any member of the team reading his or her part will also be considered a major mistake. Although you may use notes, during this presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role. With that, I'll introduce myself. I'll let the judges introduce themselves, and we can get started. My name is Stan Voss. I'm a retired ethics officer for Verizon. I failed at retirement, so I went back to work for the state of Maryland, and I was Commissioner of Occupational Professional Licensing and also Commissioner of the Water and Sewer Authority. I've been doing the ethics competition now for about 20 years. Michael.
Good morning, I'm Michael Miller. Give you the same respect, you stand up. Michael Miller, I currently am the Senior Director for Ethics and Compliance at Aerojet Rocketdyne, headquartered here in El Segundo, actually. And 25 years Air Force officer, retired as well. So glad to be here. This is my first year and first session, so I'm looking forward to it.
I'll stand as well, but I just had my hip replaced a month or so ago, so you're getting respect in the way I'm wearing long pants for the first time. So, my name is Mike Wojciechowski. I teach in the entrepreneurial department at Loyola Marymount, and I also am a serial entrepreneur. I run about 30 companies at this point, and on the boards of a number of others.
I'm Carl Oliver, and I'm retired from the ethics office department.
I'm Scott Delante, currently teaching at LMU. Thanks to being a judge on this panel like 10, 15 years ago, and when my company, Computer Sciences, moved to Virginia, I had some discussions, and before you know it, I'm teaching. So I'm a numbers guy, looking for numbers in your presentation. Kind of did the controller, treasurer, CFO routine, and a ton of ethics and board exposure at that point.
With that, if you are ready, you can begin, and I will be timing as well as you.
Yes. Yeah. So we are Avant-Garde Consulting. So we are consulting you, Marathon's Board of Trustees, on some recent public relations issues that we have come up in the last few months. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We're representatives from Avant-Garde Consulting. My name is Ann Brewer, and these are my colleagues.
My name is Stephen Frey.
My name is Tana Wansukanth-Benich.
My name is Benjamin Casper.
My name is Dominic D'Agostino.
So as you know, your company is barely 10 years old, but you're one of the only ones within the pharmaceutical industry who actually pursues solely treatments for rare diseases or orphan diseases. We think that this is a monumental task that you have taken a part of, and we appreciate your work. Now, our goal throughout this presentation is to make sure that we can guide you on an ethical business practice path while simultaneously making sure that you will be profitable and competitive within this intense industry.
So what are we going to be talking to you about today? We're going to start by giving you an overview of your company and an overview of the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. Then we're going to discuss why we believe that there is an issue with how your company currently handles its pharmaceutical drug pricing. We're also going to touch on points related to the relationships between your patients and your current business strategy. Additionally, following that, we're going to touch upon why there are those who are affected by your current business practices, which is primarily why we're here today. We're going to propose to you a solution that is legally compliant, financially feasible, and ethically complacent. We're going to talk to you about the impact of that solution as it affects those and translates to those affected by your current business practices. And of course, following that, we'll field any questions that you may have.
And good morning. Now, we assume that everyone on the board has an understanding of the pharmaceutical industry, as well as your company, Marathon Pharmaceuticals, individual background. However, it's our firm's practice to give a brief overview of the pharmaceutical industry, or of the industry that you are currently in, as well as a brief overview of Marathon Pharmaceuticals, your company. We do this to ensure that our understanding and our assessment is in line with both your understanding and assessment of the industry as well as your company. For the market segments we have, there's 200, according to the European Organization for Rare Diseases, 250 new rare diseases are discovered each year. This affects millions and millions of people throughout the world. Specifically in the United States, it's estimated that over 25 million people suffer from rare diseases and are in need, desperate need, of new orphan drugs. The FDA says that, or designates an orphan drug to be a pharmaceutical product that is aimed towards the cure or treatment of rare diseases or rare disorders that people may have. Many of the big pharmaceutical companies in the industry were not really involved within the orphan drug industry early on due to the high cost and the view that it's unprofitable. This is evidenced by, between 1973 and 1983, there were actually, in that 10-year span, only 10 orphan drug products that hit the market. However, since then, since 1983, there have been over 600 new orphan drugs that have hit the market. And this has created what I like to call, or we like to call, a new era of incentives. So it the new era of incentives runs three different ways. There's a specified criterion, which is, the specified criterion falls underneath of the incentives that are based, under the incentives and the regulations that the FDA has placed out. So the regulations for a pharmaceutical drug to be designated as an orphan drug would require that it's either less than 2,000 people that are affected by the rare disease, or if the company is over 200,000 people, they have to prove that they will be unable to actually recover the research and development costs, or the R&D costs of the new product. Secondly, we have public incentives. The public incentives are going to mainly look at what this section covers is the passing of Congress and the FDA of the actual Orphan Drug Act, The reason for the passing of the Orphan Drug Act, they said, was to supply the public with the ability to meet their unmet needs for rare diseases. And lastly are the major pharmaceutical incentives. There are four major pharmaceutical incentives that the Orphan Drug Act set into place. One was 7 years of market exclusivity. Two was 50% tax credit on R&D costs. Thirdly, we had it's a application fee waiver. So when you apply to the FDA, they waive the fee for you. And lastly, are research and development grants that come directly from the government, also the public taxpayer. And what they go into is phase 1 through phase 3 clinical trials. So there's a lot of incentives that have been built in for the pharmaceutical agents. So next, this kind of created basically four major reasons that this has become an enduring industry. The first major incentive or focus is that it's an easily defined patient population. So what that's saying is that it's a niche population. We know exactly, there's small populations, and so we know exactly who we're targeting. Secondly, the lack of alternatives for patients. So there's a lack of alternative solutions or alternative drugs for individuals that have rare diseases. Thirdly, the lower R&D costs that we went over before. And finally is the price that drugs are able to command. And so what this says is that if you think about it, if you have a rare disease, a family member or something like that, individuals are willing to pay whatever price it may cost them in order to gain that product. So for the Marathon's pharmaceutical background, there's a focus. We have our target market, exactly what you guys as a company have targeted, and finally the new product that was placed out into the market. So the focus was for, let me start with the focus. Marathon Pharmaceuticals' background is the company, as we understand it, is a biopharmaceutical company that is concentrates on the manufacturing, research and development, and finally the bringing to market of new orphan drugs for rare diseases. It has a target market it has that niche target market that we spoke about before. Sorry. So next, the focus and what the company was founded for was to first reinvest profits back into the research and development of new diseases. Secondly, to develop new medicines for rare neurological as well as movement disorders, sorry. And finally, they wanted to take the potential treatments through the regulatory process so that they can gain approval for the product. So that brings us to what we understood it to be your main focus, which is Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Duchenne is the dystrophin gene that comes within muscles, breaks down the muscle, and no longer allows the individuals that it targets, young boys and men, enables the ability to walk, cardiovascular issues, and unfortunately the life expectancy is about 15 to 25 years. And so finally it brings us up to where you guys are currently. So in February, Emflaza was approved by the FDA for manufacturing and production and commercialization to the public. So this brings us to one of our problems areas. Ben Franklin once said it takes many good deeds to build a good reputation and only one bad one to lose it. So amidst all of the issues that were happening in Washington in February when the drug was approved, there was a debate about the appeal of the Affordable Care Act, and there was a lot of media attention that was based, really looking around at the price gouging of pharmaceutical products, and therefore it dominated the headlines and really put the release of the drug for us, or for your company, into into this media monster that was happening at the time.
We believe that many of the problems created lie in the failed public relations, more specifically some of the press releases in February of 2017. We believe the conflicting message can lie solely in the February 13th, 2017 press release by CEO Jeff Aaron. In this release, it was stated that most importantly of all, I want to reinforce that every patient who needs this drug will have access to it, and that price should not be a barrier. Put simply, we expect patients will pay around standard copay of typically $20 or less per prescription. This was the message that was trying to be conveyed during this press release. However, the public takeaway was that Marathon Pharmaceuticals was releasing an $89,000 Duchenne muscular dystrophy drug. This created, for a new company as yourselves, a massive public outrage and disconnect between the consumer, who is ultimately the patient, and Marathon Pharmaceuticals. Finally, the customer disconnect is highlighted further. As the $89,000 sticker price was captured in headlines, the message was lost in the end of the ultimate goal to provide this drug at an affordable price for everybody who needs it. Finally, on March 16, 2017, Jeff Aaron stated that we are pleased to announce that we have reached an agreement to a main competitor, PTC Therapeutics, to acquire Emflaza, including full commercialization rights. So on March 16, 2017, it was stated to the public that this drug that was trying to be brought to market had been sold with all exclusivity rights and commercialization rights in the future to a main competitor. We believe that this highlights the disconnect that was created in the month span between the February 13th release and the March 16th release, and led to the final action, which was selling the rights to the drug that you had founded.
So now we're going to begin the discussion of our solution. So we understand that maybe addressing the issues that we just highlighted may seem dismaying at first, We want to reassure you that we believe if you're able to overcome these, you will truly become a successful and reputable company within the pharmaceutical industry. So in the middle of the screen, you notice building relationships. That's the main theme that we would like to address throughout our solution. I feel that it's extremely important, and if you're able to overcome your problem areas by building these relationships, you'll be able to maintain your reputation as a positive and informative company. So I'm going to pass it to Ben. He's going to discuss the first facet of our solution, which is business strategy.
Thank you. Marathon's business strategy and actions have contradicted what is stated in their vision. In order to operate in the manner that portrays the ethics that Marathon would like to exude to their consumers, we feel you have to be willing to sacrifice a small portion of short-term profits in order to benefit the final stakeholder. Currently, Marathon uses the price of Emflaza as the sole determinant of profits and firm value. The $89,000 price tag, however, puts immense and unbearable amount of pressure on the consumer, forcing them to make a decision on a loved one's life and early death based on money and not the well-being of the child. Considering that Emflaza's generic form, deflazacort, has been available internationally for over 20 years at a price tag of only $1,500 a year, we can determine that there is a solution to be found. Our proposed solution to you is to focus on creating a more efficient supply chain. Currently, Marathon houses or handles all three phases of product creation, which include research and development, manufacturing, and commercialization of the product. We are proposing that Marathon outsources manufacturing to a better equipped and more experienced firm. Doing this will allow them to reduce costs and provide Emflaza at a lower price, making it more accessible to your consumers. Thank you.
So next, I'm going to discuss the mission statement aspect of our solution. So as you all know, a mission statement is a critical element to a company's organizational business strategy and acts as a guide for all of the decisions you make as a company. However, when we visited your website, we noticed that you didn't provide any links for consumers or visitors of the website to figure out what exactly your mission statement is. There wasn't one defined. Now that's not to say that you don't provide a lot of information for consumers to look at that kind of outlines your goals as a company, but we feel without having a direct and succinct mission statement, you're creating a disconnect between your company and your stakeholders, including your employees as well as the people who need the actual drugs. So we visited the About page on your website and we pulled a quote that we thought best represented what could be a mission statement for your company. So as the screen reads, we pulled, Marathon Pharmaceuticals is dedicated to improving the lives of patients by developing new treatments for rare neurological and movement disorders. So as I click the screen, you notice that we've transformed it, and we want to be able to capture more of what you do as a company by saying, Marathon Pharmaceuticals is dedicated to improving the lives of patients through the development and the delivery of new orphan disease treatments. I feel like this quote allows you to be more inclusive of your goals as a company, which are to research, develop, and deliver these treatments for people around the nation. We also feel by clarifying exactly what your mission statement is, you'll be able to build a stronger connection between your company and the people that you serve. So next, I'm going to pass it over to Tanwan, and she'll be discussing the public relations aspect of our solution.
So it's clear that a current issue that your company is facing is its strained public relations. We're proposing that you implement a new public relations strategy that will overall enhance the performance of your company. So first and foremost, we would like to focus on putting the individual first. And what we mean by that is that currently companies tend to put their stockholders, research and development teams, as well as employees before their community. However, we believe that care for communities should take precedent over any financial interests that your company may have. That being said, if a solution exists, it is the responsibility of your company to present it reasonably so. Communities will see that your company cares about the populations in which you're developing these solutions for. That will translate to a stronger public image that will in turn enhance the overall performance of your company. So that's why we're essentially proposing that you rebuild your current public relations strategy. This strategy is going to focus on your company's devotion to the community it seeks to support, specifically through developing a meaningful message, as well as creating an overall positive public image in the eyes of those you're trying to reach. So how are we going to go about doing this? First, we're going to focus on community outreach as well as creating a more physical presence within the communities you're trying to support. This includes family and friends. So how are you going to do that specifically? We're proposing that you have your employees volunteer at awareness as well as fundraising events specifically targeted towards those communities that you're seeking to support. Further than that, we also propose that your company also create and develop different awareness and fundraising events that also support these communities. Secondly, within this public relations strategy, we believe that it is important for you to develop your website further. We want it to reflect that your company is pursuing a more genuine, transparent, as well as dependable business model. We want it to reflect who you are as a company as well as the values that you have. We believe that your website is a primary means of reaching your community, so it's important that it be developed. There are 5 specific ways in which we believe that your company should be developed. First of all is the About Us section. As Anne mentioned earlier, there is no current mission statement, so it's important that your About Us section reflect a meaningful mission statement as well as the values that your company holds. Secondly, having a media outlet that demonstrates news releases as well as press releases in regards to your company, as well as different ways in which your community can contact you. Third, having actual names and faces to the images that are currently on your website. This will make your company far more relatable as well as authentic in the eyes of your consumers. Fourth, we believe that it's important to have a research and development section that clearly outlines and is transparent about the way you're funding research and development projects as well as current products being developed. And finally, what we believe to be most important about the development of this website is a responsibility section that transparently outlines how your company is following a business model that is ethically compliant. More specifically, how it is pursuing a business model that's driven by integrity and through its performance. The most important part of our rebuilding public relations strategy that we're proposing is having a two-way conversation with your community. Your current public relations is a one-way communication method, specifically through public press releases as well as news releases. However, this isn't an issue where you should only have this one-way conversation. We believe that it's important for your community to influence the way in which your business moves as well. Next, we're going to talk about the impact of the solution, and I'm going to lead it to Ben, who's going to talk about the financials.
Thank you. Financial impact for Marathon they will have to bear a forfeit on short-term profits in order to both make the social impact that they desire and improve the long-term outlook of the firm. The average profit margin for pharmaceutical industries is 19%, but on companies that focus only on orphan drugs, it is higher. This exorbitantly high profit margin is one of the main reasons for the consumer unrest during the rollout of Emflaza. In order to reduce the profit margin and curtail this consumer unrest, you will have to reduce the price of Emflaza. By doing this, you will improve consumer relations and product loyalty, making a more sustainable goal of when in 7 years the patent runs out and other competitors enter the market. Exclusive access to the American market does not mean that higher prices are better. Improving community relations and reducing the price will increase sales and increase them over time, providing a sustainable stream of income to reinvest into future research and development costs. In summation, reducing the price of Emflaza and increasing product loyalty will not only help Marathon produce the social impact that they desire, but will also help them create a long-term solution to research and development costs.
So next, I'm going to be talking about the legal impact of our solution. So one of our goals today with our solution is to make sure that you and your company are able to maintain a reputable stance in the pharmaceutical industry. So recently, with the Emflaza situation, we felt that you risked developing a reputation that suggested a disregard for the legal entities who actually are there to support and protect consumers from outrageous drug prices. But now, with our solution that we're implementing, we really hope that will help you navigate around this negative attention that you're getting, and by association, the time and money that's been going in to prevent this negative appearance. With our solution, we're hoping that you will now be able to communicate to your stakeholders that you're profiting for the benefit of the consumers, not profiting for just profit's sake. So now I'm going to pass it to Dom, and he's going to be discussing the final impact of our solution, the stakeholders.
So finally, we'd like to conclude how impact of solutions will affect what we identify as key stakeholders for your company. First, we'd like to start with the customer. We believe that the customer is the #1 stakeholder, and in this industry, the customer is always the patient. More specifically, it's the Duchenne muscular dystrophy community. In 2015, the FDA stated that nearly 8 out of every 10 prescriptions filled in the United States are for generic drugs. This is because generic drugs must go through the same rigorous approval process as big name pharmaceuticals. Now, for every purchase, a consumer is faced with quality and price as 2 decision drivers. Because of the almost identical quality, price becomes one of the main decision drivers for our industry. We believe by keeping an open line of communication and explicitly detailing discounts, retail process, and our ultimate goal of trying to make this drug affordable for all who are in need of it, will help prioritize customers as a main stakeholder and as a priority to this company. Next, we believe doctors are our main stakeholder. Ultimately, a patient who trusts their doctor will follow whatever prescription they subscribe to them. By convincing a doctor that we're of equal quality, because ultimately the doctor wants to sign off on and prescribe whatever drug will help the patient the most. They don't look at price themselves. So if they believe in our company and prescribe it to their patient, the patient will most likely use that drug. Next is insurance companies. We believe that by keeping an open line of communication and creating a fair price for the insurance company as well as ourselves will help the insurance company create a fair price of co-pays and further insurance costs for the customer. This will allow the customer to have to make less of an impactful decision when it comes to choosing between a known quality pharmaceutical drug and the generic version. And finally, we want to talk about the employees. Everyone knows that employees can be of the greatest asset to a company. Because of this, when there's crisis and bad reputation surrounding the company, employees can feel shame and embarrassment about working for their company. They can no longer align their own mission with that of the company, and this can create a great disconnect. This is troublesome when they act on our behalf when talking to doctors and insurance companies to help negotiate our business. We believe that by aligning our own goals and missions with that of our employees, and in times of crisis, keeping that open line of communication again, and talking to them so that they know their future and the company's future, will help the company prosper. And finally, we believe that by growing a greater understanding of your stakeholders, you'll be able to better work on their behalf. Ultimately, we are very confident that our proposed solution can help drive you towards work that acts in the best interest of stakeholders and the Duchenne muscular dystrophy community to help drive prosperity and well-being in the future. Thank you.
So again, we'd like to thank you for your time and attention, and would like to remind you that the problems we have highlighted today are not merely just that. There are opportunities for you to grasp the success that's at your fingertips in this industry. So again, we'd like to thank you, and we welcome any questions now.
Thank you. At this time, what we will do is we will have a 20-minute session for the judges to ask questions of you, and we remind you that you are to stay in role as well as to respect the judges for the role that they are representing here. So with that, I will start with any of the judges in whatever order you choose. And we, at the end of this, we will offer some feedback.
Okay.
I've got a question. Relative to this sale on March 16th, that just as you were pulling together our consulting study and kind of heading for the airport, it sounds like all this news broke. So marrying our PR strategy to that drug and the profitability, I don't understand that. That really we're going to marry our PR strategy to the strategy of the company today, which is excluding Emflaza. So how does the PR strategy link to the current strengths of the company?
Sure. The sale of the Emflaza drug is not the end of the line for this company. They want to remain in this market. They said that the research and development costs, or the sale of that drug will fund research and development costs in this industry, and more importantly, for the Duchenne muscular dystrophy community in the future. We believe that by marrying a public relations campaign that corrects the mistakes you've made in the past will help you in the future, as it is your ultimate goal to get back into the market and more specifically, this community. We believe that this community will remember what has happened in the past, and next time they'll be skeptical when the new drug is launched.
And I know Dom and Ben both discussed some of the financial parts of our suggestion. So we actually, with our PR strategy in regards to marrying it with the financials, we want to stress that one of the major flaws that ended up happening was that your company didn't advertise that you're trying to make it $20 a month for each patient. Rather, they stuck in their minds was as $80,000 a year. So we think that by improving the PR aspect of this, you'll be able to better communicate with your consumers about what actually they're going to be receiving at the end of the line. So Tanner, I'm discussing with your public relations strategy, opening that two-way communication so consumers can ask these questions and figure out how exactly are you benefiting us and vice versa with the price.
Let me just follow on with the question about your answer. So that capital that we got out of the sale of the plaza that is going to be used for innovation, R&D for drugs, but that's a very long pipeline as I understand it. So that we need to take today's PR strategy. I don't think our investors, as the board, we're trying to look out for our investors. And they're not going to hang around 10 years to see what we do next. We've got to have that PR strategy tied to something in between. What is that something?
I think we want to remain active in this community, and I think we want to, with various journals and research, we want to kind of become a bigger part of the community than just somebody who is stepping in, providing the drug, and getting out. We want to best meet their needs. So there might be in between actions that we take. We might be the ones providing research. We might be the ones producing journals in the meantime. If it is your ultimate goal to serve this community, we believe that it's not just it ends here today and next time you come out with a drug you get back into the market. We believe from now until then it is your duty to remain present in this industry and market.
Question, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to grasp from your perspective what you perceive as our legal concerns. I recall hearing that primarily disregard for legal entities or regulators. What else, or what other legal implications ought we be paying attention to or concerned about?
Yeah, I can take some of that. So I guess, are you asking in terms of regulation, or are you looking at like maybe possible lawsuits that may come from insurance companies or something like that? Something that we would, that would definitely be something that you guys would want to be aware of that's in the future. In terms of like a solution for that, it kind of ties into the financials that was asked before, tying to the public relations also. We were kind of talking last night, and we haven't really seen anything released from the board recently. And so with moving forward for the legal situation, okay, so there is the insurance company that's possible to sue. But however, it's going to be really important to keep that relationship together. The information that we received from your company simply said that you guys were in the future looking to continue to develop products for rare diseases and specifically within the muscular dystrophy community. However, nothing specific has been told to us. So I think that, legally with the insurance, that's one thing. The insurance companies is something that you definitely want to be aware of and be in communication with them to make sure that they're on board. However, I don't see that to be too big of an issue because now that PCT has the drug, I'm sure that they're going to then sell it to the insurance company. The insurance company can then move forward with it. In terms of regulations that could be possible, is with new administration that's in government, not to get too into it, but some sort of regulation that they place or provide or release could be something that we definitely want to keep track of. However, there's nothing currently that is legally that we're really too worried about, just because we won't know the outcomes that are coming up. We just want to be, I guess, aware that regulations could decrease, they could increase. However, I don't believe they would be affecting us, being that we did sell the product on March 16th. When we sold the market exclusivity, as well as they still have the priority review voucher as well, kind of in the back pocket that can be sold too. But for the legalities, that's the only two I can really see as possible. Insurance companies, we want to keep in contact with them, as well as trying to develop a plan legally for the future if this happens, if that happens, in those two instances. And I would say that's in about, the short term 1 year, and then also a plan for a 5-year that would go beyond the possible repeal of the Affordable Care Act.
So first of all, we sold Plaza with a indemnification from the buyer, so I'm pretty sure we're not going to have any legal issues with regard to that going on. That will be their problem. But my question to you is, how do you match an ethical argument against the pricing for these drugs is more mathematical, right? It takes $500 million to $1 billion to bring an orphan drug through the testing to market, right? And we only have 7 years, and there's a return to our shareholders that we're obligated to consider. And so it's almost mathematical. This particular community is not like selling hamburgers where we can sell another 10 million hamburgers next year if we just promote it better. There's a limited community in this rare disease. That's why orphan drugs are called orphan drugs. So the 89,000, while it may be inflammatory in the press, and that's exactly what it was, you didn't discuss the generic in terms of it cost the consumer $1,500, but what was the fully amortized cost of of that particular product? And is there a difference? This was only going to be $20. So again, I'm having trouble seeing the ethics. We as a company felt like we're very ethical, right? We worked very hard to bring this orphan drug to market, right? And it's priced based on an amortization of value and a return to our shareholders. It wasn't price gouging because we're the only one in town. There are other competitors. So where's the ethics? Where's the ethics violation there?
So this drug did exist prior to the purposes that you brought to the FDA for approval. This drug has existed for 30 to 40 years in Europe, and up to this point it was being imported for this purpose. So the research and development, the testing and the clinical trials were actually already there. So the research and development costs were not nearly as high as should this have been a brand new drug that was just invented. Because those lower R&D costs were, I guess, cut in half because you brought research from a pre-existing drug. You brought it to the United States where it wasn't approved yet, and you got through the approval process faster than most drugs do because that research was already there. And of course, it costed less because it was pre-existing. So we believe that, and of course it's a private company, so we cannot see exactly, but we believe that since the drug is pre-existing, as Ben mentioned, you could even import this drug from other manufacturers for an even lower cost, and pairing that with the low research and development costs that it takes compared to what it typically costs, we think that 89,000 is far overreaching, and as you said, it was inflammatory.
Also, deflazacort, which is the generic, was not FDA approved, so insurance companies were not covering that. The $1,500 was the price.
I think also just to add to that is this is a new industry. The industry is really shifting. Big pharma is moving in. That opportunity for a small or medium-sized company such as yours, which is, it's really interesting how you guys have kind of been on the forefront of this changing model of, possibly. It was kind of a question we had for with the intention was the intention to, because what we took and what the public took in our conversations with you guys, as well as with what was put out in the media, is that you had every single intention of manufacturing this product and then commercializing it to provide for the public. However, due to the media outrage, the timing of the FDA approval was a little unfortunate too, as we had a regime change, in the White House as well. So it's really admirable that it's kind of a new industry, so we're not too sure. And a lot of the research that we did with other companies in terms of orphan drugs, to what you were saying, the 89,000 didn't seem too inflammatory. However, it's not like it was a typical 5 to 7 year process for research and development of the new drug. Clinical studies from phase 1 to phase 3 are granted additional grants from the United States government. And then it only has about an average of 2.89 years to come through. So that's how we came to that conclusion. Was that as a small business or a new startup that's moving the industry that way, the lower costs would have been better in the long-term situation. Because like, it was released by Jeff, there was a media release that said how it was only $20 to the individual, but the takeaway due to the government situation at the time and the media coverage was that it was $89,000 that people were going to be paying. So by creating a public relations or media outlets that are more informative to the consumer, it could have been possible to avoid that situation. There was another point, but I can't get it off the top of my head, so thank you.
So as far as like improving the media relations and getting that image out there, I think one of your strongest points first off in your recommendation was we have to reduce prices. I think the quote was we have to forfeit short-term profits to really be good in the long term. And that really that reduction of profits is going to be more to improve our image and the reputation of the company. But in reducing those profits, that flies in the face of all of the arguments that you made about you need long-term innovation, we need to have a major presence in this field, muscular dystrophy, there's a great world of need and health around muscular dystrophy. But to make that as far as a PR recommendation to the board, that really one of the first tenets of that would be you have to reduce prices, then that has a problem for us where we are protecting we have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders to maintain the profits that we have. And here we just gave up one of our big, most profitable lines and cash flows that would be funding the future. So I didn't quite understand how making that as the first line of a PR strategy would be to reduce prices and profitability and forego the short-term profits that fund long-term presence in the market.
And I want to piggyback on that thought because when you mentioned the profitability, exorbitantly high was the word that was used, profit margin. And so this reduction that we're talking about, how much of a reduction and for how long? I didn't necessarily hear a recommendation to that.
So the pharmaceutical industry, that 19% profit margin has consistently been one of the top industries in the country for the past 15 years. But as far as a time frame for how long we want to reduce these profits, it would just be to build a brand loyalty and understanding that our product, we're a company that is worth buying from because we stand by our mission statement. So your patent's going to run out in 7 years. And at that time, other competitors are going to enter the market. At that point, they'll be able to offer a product in a couple years after that, once they get their manufacturing and everything worked out, at a comparable price. We want to ensure that our brand stands for something at that point.
I think that talks to like big pharma that's going to be, that is really coming into this, like the Mercks, as a small company, building that relationship, similar like a Tylenol or Advil. People go to the store, you still buy Tylenol because in their head, Tylenol was the one who got them, through headaches early on, but there's also that generic brand that's available. But for whatever reason, there's still that strong tie that people have to the Tylenol brand, which is what we were trying to say with that long-term projection. If you were to take a lesser profit, it's around 31% in the orphan drug industry. If you were able to cut that by 3 to 4% through management, reducing costs somehow through manufacturing, I think that may be the way that we could best do it. We just didn't have the physical financials of your internals in order to make that determination. And kind of want to,
So I see where your point was initially about how if we're lowering costs, what's the need to sort of devote our public relations strategy to the consumers? The rationale behind that is essentially because you're lowering, the idea of lowering these prices are for future products that you're developing, seeing as we've already sold off the product that we're talking to you about today. That being said, we want to make sure that your company demonstrates to the community it's seeking to support dedication. Otherwise, as Ben and Dom have reiterated many times, was that the issue is that the consumers aren't going to have trust and aren't going to want to come back to the company. And that's not just consumers in terms of patients, but that's also insurance companies, which is also one of your huge markets, specifically who you're targeting. So that's why essentially it's really important to also attack the consumers in the public relations strategy, rather than, or in conjunction with the change in price.
Suppose we keep our price where it is. What impact is that going to have on our company?
I think it would probably cause incredible backlash from probably both political parties. It would increase pressure from the public to amend this industry and the flaws that it seemed it has created with the monopoly. Because like we said, this drug was being imported from European countries for $1,500. So for those 9,000 to 12,000 people that currently have Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, they're immediately seeing, a greater than 10 time increase on what they're paying on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. Sorry. So that backlash in this current time in America would not shine your company in the best light.
Is this our only product?
As of right now, yes.
It is.
And we just sold it?
Yes.
We're out of business?
No, you're continuing research and development for future products. And
Risky stuff, right?
Correct.
There's no guarantee we're going to discover anything.
That's correct.
What's our future line? We got anything in the pipeline?
So that's one of the things that we had discussed with the PR is there's no publications regarding what you have in the pipeline. But we do know with the selling of the drug to your competitor, you still are getting a little bit of income from having the initial patent. So we're still having that coming in to kind of further pursue your research.
Okay, so we aren't selling anything now. We've reduced our price to zero. What's the problem?
Well, your company is still developing and researching different products. For us as your consulting company, because you are not a public company, you haven't actually exposed to us what research and development efforts you're currently pursuing. But you did make an announcement that with the money that you have, you will be pursuing more research and development for products.
And why are we in the business of pursuing orphan drugs?
I would say it's because it's a niche market that needs the attention. So ultimately, we're assuming that your company wants to do this to do the right thing for the people across the nation who maybe don't have cures or treatments for these diseases that they're suffering from. So the nobility aspect is definitely a huge part of why you've pursued this industry, and I think that's important to know.
I think the simple answer to that is profit. Why does anyone go in business? You know what I mean? To make a
charge our
profit.
prices.
Correct. Take care of their shareholders.
That's why they designated an orphan drug, so you can charge high prices for it.
19% is higher than market
Correct.
return for other products.
Correct.
But with the orphan drug designation, you are also granted tax credits, expedited approval process, and exclusivity in the market that is longer than if you were to enter, say, cancer research and a larger disease or illness. So originally, when the ODA, as Steve said, was created in 1983, if I'm correct? Should we stop? Okay. We believe that that protection that was granted you was so that you were able to recoup your research and development costs and eventually make a profit. And you were allowed to have a longer time span, so you're not just cramming profits into 3 years, because once that generic enters the market, you're essentially on an even playing field with 5 to 10 other companies at the time. So we believe if you correctly use the ODA designations with a lower price, you will be able to make your profits back.
But it's the incentive for us to be in this business. To make money.
The fact that it is such a small market and that you have to invest a similar amount of research and development into it suggests that the price would have to be much higher. But with the incentives that the ODA offers, they're there so that you can have a a smaller price. That's why you get a 50% tax credit on all research and development.
This is very interesting, and we could probably go on for a while. And I think that you may benefit significantly if we cut it here and now take it to what are some of the feedback statements or questions that the board would have. I had some questions. I'll just stay out and I'll try to address them in feedback, but I'm going to let some of the other judges go ahead and I'll chime in at the end.
Sure. I commend you guys for your work, your research, and your preparedness. Not always easy to get in front of a panel of strangers and be challenged for what you're presenting. With that said, constructive feedback here. Succinctness is so vitally important, and I felt like when I asked you my question regarding the legal concerns, the legal matters, I'm still wondering what get there quickly and succinctly is my one encouragement in terms of thinking through, okay, how can I respond, hit the point, and be done? That's my encouragement to you for how I can improve in that area. Fair.
Well, fair, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I think you want to remember is that you as a group are selling to us. You have to convince us. So and we have this perspective of financial responsibility to the shareholders. So when you say things like you're charging exorbitant amounts, that's an inflammatory term, right? So that's a negative term. So now I'm going, wait a minute, he just called me a price gouger. So I get defensive in this role, right? So I think you want to make sure that you don't inflame and then you continue to sell, right? The other thing is that you have to, if we've already sold the drug, then lowering the price means nothing right now. What you're really selling is that a proactive media presence and messaging through a revised mission statement that you're talking about. You're talking about what the message you need to present from now going forward. Your recommendation might be that you consider that, but until you told me that, hey, they bought this drug from Europe and the testing was already done, and so that $1 billion worth of pre-development wasn't done. So that's nowhere in your executive summary, and no way was it presented until I asked the question. Right? So even though we theoretically are supposed to know, we don't know. Right? So you have to make sure you give those facts so that we can say, oh, there's the ethical argument, because your next piece is going to be this abbreviated ethical presentation, and the ethics are that you don't have that much money into it. You don't have to charge that much money and still get above market rate returns to protect the shareholders. That's the message I think you need to revise and retarget.
Well, if this really is a generic drug, I don't see how it's going to be an orphan drug in the United States. And also the testing overseas does not always meet the U.S. standards. But what I was really missing here was the values of our company. I asked, well, why are we in this business? It isn't the mission statement that gives you that. It's the value statement. What are the values of this company? Why are we in this business? Are we in this to make a profit? Is that our value? Or do we say somewhere that we're in this business to help people who really need help and aren't getting help elsewhere? So I would like you to, if we're going to change our ways, I'd like you to make it clear that by changing ways, we're supporting the values that we espouse as a company and agency.
I would say as consultants, you study a situation and then you arrive at genius-type solutions. And those involve compelling arguments. And the compelling argument around, kind of like you were saying, you have to sell the thing to the board of directors. Also, as the board, we're going to have some company pride relative to what we do and what we're about and the decisions we've made so far. And I'm torn on this presentation because it was one of the quickest relative to as a compliment to you guys. It was one of the quickest in getting through the presentation, and the quickest 20 minutes I've spent in going through Q&A. It just flew by because it's really a good topic. On the other hand, I'm torn because it's a terrible situation where I don't know if going in and picking this case, you knew Emplaza was being sold. And it took the wind out of the sails, and there's an opportunity to bounce back with a message and a compelling case around that. But I didn't, in asking the question a couple of different ways, I didn't really find what the strengths of the company were, and a few of us followed up on it. So what else do we have here? And I think that might leave the panel, in a judging competition a bit flat, and would leave the directors a bit flat. And in any situation, either as an individual or a company, we do come back to the value statement and the mission statement, which you very nicely put that right out in the middle up front. Very simple slide, the mission statement, PR strategy, and strategy. But that mission statement has changed since March 16th. And even though we asked a few times, we didn't find out. And if anything, the company is a bit secretive or less than transparent. I did get that out of the presentation. Maybe there's a message there as to how would you overcome, the fact that we don't have anything out there yet. But that would require almost some mining of data and other things around. You have to be like forensic investigators to figure out what is Marathon up to, and do they really have value? I'm highly suspicious at this point. I'm even nervous as a director, back in role, that we made a mistake, we sold it, and now the wind is out of our sails. That's how I feel right now.
Yeah, I'd like to compliment you all on the job well done, but you picked a really tough topic, really tough. And in some instances, it made you vulnerable to inconsistency. When you hit the mission, boom, you're right on. And you're trying to do better by communicating and do a better job of communicating to your stakeholders. That's great. Establish what your values are. Put those out there and follow those. As Michael said, you got to be succinct. Be careful to not be inflammatory. You know we're the board, but are you aware that on most boards now, they have an executive board member who is usually the CEO, and you guys slapped the CEO. I mean, you slapped him. On January 1st, he made the mistake of, and then on March the 16th, and I'm like, well, if I'm sitting here, my name is Jeff Aaron, and you have just peed me off, and I'm like, why are we paying them the money we're paying them? So be careful of what your audience is and what you're saying in terms of your recommendation to them. And even in terms of identifying what your problem is or what the company's problem is and why we got here. We know we've done some things that put us in a pretty bad light. But our hope is that you're going to come and be our knight in shining armor. Don't beat us up. Just kind of tell us how we can get to where we need to be. But real tough topic. You guys did, I think, an admirable job with it. Your presentation skills were very good. I like the way you handed it off to each other. The whole thing with the mission, communications, the values, all of that real good. And I think I would have kind of kept it at a high level in telling us, the board, that you need to be very clear about what your mission is. You need to establish your values in terms of that mission. And this is how we're going to communicate them to all of our stakeholders going forward. One last thing, you talked about the generic and the patent, and that kind of got me confused because I know a lot of times when a drug is initially developed, they have that patent period where generics and others can be introduced. They are the sole provider of it. So that was a little conflicting to me. And then I heard right at the end, it was not a public company, but then you had shareholders. I'm like, maybe they're private shareholders, and not, but it sort of left me wondering, are we really not a public company? Do we really have shareholders? Where are we? So there were some questions left to be answered, but all in all, you did a great job.
Just one other thought. When you went into your solutions space and talked about the individual, the community, it really felt very heavily weighted in terms of a scale. It was so heavily weighted towards The only reason you're in business is to take care of these individuals, and to the extent that if you skew it that hard, you won't be in business very long. And I don't think there was an appreciation of that in terms of the recommendations or the solutions. Does that